Meanwhile, Tasmanians have been scrambling to return home as the state prepares to cut itself off from the rest of the country. From midnight tonight, anyone arriving will need to undertake a 2-week quarantine period, with an exception for those providing essential goods and services. The state's recorded 10 COVID-19 cases. The Premier is standing by his tough border controls.
I make no apologies for taking these steps. Tasmania has one of the oldest, one of the most vulnerablest populations in the country. We know that this virus is deadly to old people. It's appropriate that we take these measures and we protect our population.
Cafes and restaurants are bracing for even tighter restrictions on the number of people allowed as the National Cabinet meets again. Live now to political reporter Trudy McIntosh. Trudy, what's the advice been provided by medical authorities so far?
Annalise, this National Cabinet phone hookup with all the state and territory leaders has kicked off in the last few minutes. Today is about trying to provide greater clarity in part on these internal restrictions. Earlier in the week, the announcement that non-essential internal gatherings with above 100 people should not be going ahead. But Australia's chief medical officers have been working across the week at providing more advice, more specific details about exactly how many people should be in even spaces that have less than 100 people. Here was the Deputy Chief Medical Officer yesterday on what advice they had provided to the National Cabinet.
4 square metres per person, so that's a hard concept to actually to announce. It depends on the size of the room and depends on how the room's being used. We will come through with further details, which will go to the Cabinet, as I said, later this week.
The Prime Minister was out this morning defending the measures that his government is taking in terms of internal spaces and gatherings right across the country to deal with the spread of this virus. Speaking to Alan Jones on 2GB Radio, he was asked whether he would be comfortable to see some of these smaller businesses who are unable to comply with these restrictions go broke as a result of this. The Prime Minister saying his first priority is the safety and health of Australians.
Well, Alan, the National Cabinet will meet today, and I'm not going to go into what they are.
No, I don't expect you to do that.
Because they're the rules of the National Cabinet. But what we are doing and what the health advice is to practice this social distancing. And when people are in closer contact, particularly in closed spaces, that spreads the virus. We have to slow the virus, and that means there are circumstances where we will have to restrict the number of people that are in enclosed spaces. That's what you have to do to save lives.
Now, Annalise, it's still worth pointing out that this internal tightening of restrictions in places like restaurants and cafes don't apply to those list of essential places. For now, even places with transport where it can be pretty heavily crowded are exempt from these sort of distancing rules. But the Prime Minister is always stressing, where possible, to stay this 1.5 metres apart.